Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Baier with GAI Insights, and we're delighted to welcome you to today's webinar. Get your data ready. Get your data AI ready with Ben from Seekr here. So let's go through the agenda. We'll go about 25 to 30 minutes, talk about readiness, some of the challenges, how do we optimize for it, a success story, what's actually working, and what to expect near term and in the future. We're here with Ben Faircloth from Seekr. Ben, tell us a little bit about your background before we jump into this. It's a unique background and very relevant to today's age.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Ben Faircloth. I've been with Seekr for a couple months now, but I've always been in the data AI space from working as an SI, doing implementation, consulting, and then with Seekr, I'm the AI director of AI solutions and Evangelism. And so excited to be here to chat. I think one of the key shifts in AI is this move from single step responses to agentic AI. And these are systems that can really plan, reason, act autonomously. But there's a lot of challenges associated with that. And data is going to be the number one. So really excited to dive into it.
Well, great. Well, let's jump in. And one of the things we'll make sure the audience gets out of it is a understanding certainly of the basics and the challenges, but actually practical things to start going forward with here. So, Ben, these companies are swimming in data. 85% of the data is unstructured. Everyone's talking about AI. Don't we just point a large language model at our corpus of data and everything's solved? Why is this hard?
Yeah. I mean, as the AI systems themselves get more advanced, the data readiness is actually more and more important, more than ever. With traditional AI, unlike traditional AI, agentic systems actually break tasks into steps. They analyze context, they make decisions. And in order to do that, they don't work from the raw unstructured data. That first needs to be transformed into well-structured AI-ready formats. And when we talk about well-structured, it's a lot more than just converting a PDF into a markdown. It's about organizing information so that the AI can actually understand context, relationships, and intent within that data. And there's a lot of challenges there that actually slow down AI development and ultimately impact performance. The first is going to be just the sheer volume and variety of data that enterprises generate, everything from their structured databases to PDFs, documents, JSONs, spreadsheets, and processing all of this manually is not only slow, it's also prone to a lot of human errors. So it's like, imagine trying to sift through, thousands of documents without a clear way to actually prioritize what matters most. It's overwhelming for us, and it's, an AI faces the exact same challenge when dealing with unstructured data. And then there's also, context and consistency. Without a clear relationship between different sections of data that we provide to an artificial intelligence system, it may misinterpret that information or miss key insights. So let's say it's analyzing a 50-page compliance document. It's going to need to distinguish between, what are the regulatory requirements in here? What is the background information? What are the procedural guidelines? And without structure, it could actually misapply rules or overlook some critical decisions. And then, of course, just like with any type of system that relies on data quality and bias is going to be even more of a concern. Poor data quality can, of course, lead to unreliable outputs. And bias training data can cause skewed decisions that don't actually align with real world scenarios. So, ensuring the data sets are both accurate and contextually relevant, even for the most advanced model, will actually struggle without that. And so ultimately, without any type of structure that we provide to it, even the best AI system is going to fall short.
And then share a little more about, so I've been using a term and there's unstructured data, but help the audience get a little more specific here. So we're talking about thousands of PDFs. Are we talking about wiki pages? Are we talking about emails? Are we talking about YouTube videos, PowerPoints?
Yeah. I mean, it's all those and more, right? And, the primary challenge for enterprises is that they are not able to get all those data sets, of various mixed modal, forms readily understood for a model. And this is really important, especially when you talk about fine tuning a model. LLMs need data that's broken into structured sections with those clear relationships that we talked about in order to actually apply information logically. It's like, it's not necessarily about preparing the data. It's not just about the formatting. It's about teaching the LLM to reason through complex workflows. So, and again, this is super time consuming and error prone and lots of complexity. And that's why end-to-end solutions are really essential here. Instead of stitching together tools that businesses, use, they need platforms that can actually automate this entire process. So platforms like Seekr Flow, for instance, we streamline this workflow. We ensure that there's faster, more accurate data preparation and with less manual effort. And so ultimately, allowing businesses to accelerate their AI development and deployment.
But Ben, we just spent $3 million on a data lake. Isn't that all we need?
That's only one step, So you have a data lake, and it might actually be containing any of those, those unstructured documents into your data swamp, in files.
Yeah.
So you actually have to use best practices to really ensure that the data is going to be ready for a precise workflow like Agentic AI. So to actually get the full potential of AI, we need to provide data that's like essentially teach it how to reason with the data that we're providing it. And so that preparation is really important. So first you have to structure the data into hierarchical sections. So I can take a document from my data lake sitting out in any cloud storage, and I can actually break it down. Maybe I'm going to break it down into chapters and subheadings, and I'm going to preserve all the relationships within that data. And that's going to help the AI actually maintain context and identify dependencies. So let's say I had, that 50-page compliance document. I might actually, have multiple blocks. Maybe it's going to be one section on regulatory requirements, one on penalties, one on exemptions. So it's like the very first step that you're going to take, but it actually takes a lot more than that. So that's just the chunking process. Then you still have to get the data in a format that an LLM is going to understand. And that format, specifically speaking, is question and answer pairs. So instead of providing facts, we actually need to provide structured examples of how to actually apply that information. So, what we're doing here is almost giving the LLM a mini lesson on the data, training it to answer specific questions based on the relevant details. So an example would be, if I have one of those compliance documents, maybe it deals with, some type of finance, and there's late penalty information in there. I might actually provide the LLM as part of fine tuning a question: what are the penalties for late payments? And then the answer will state, hey, it's a 5%, late fee, 1% monthly interest apply, and this all came from section 4.2 of the document. So I'm not only am I chunking it, structuring it, I'm also putting it into this format that an LLM is going to be able to recognize patterns from. And so that's going to ultimately allow for it to know, how, reinforce the accuracy in reasoning through a multi-step workflow, specifically with like Agentic AI.
I know we're going to walk into a case study, but the generic level feels like this is a scenario where we have board alignment already. We want to invest in AI. We've gone through a selection. We probably, perhaps chose customer service or something. We've got, a couple thousand PDF documents and Slack messages, something else over in other data lakes. So we're taking all that data from there, cleaning it up and optimizing it, particularly around these question answer pair, putting it into another area that then the model can then really learn better from. Is that correctly said?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we think about it as a two-step process of you structure the data, then you fine tune it. But in this case, it is a little more nuanced than that. And that's where, having a tool set, that allows you to do all of that in one place is really important, because you're right. We ingest, the data is being ingested regardless of what the data source type is, and then you have to get it into a format that is consistent across all those different types of data sets, right? So maybe that's where you get it into a markdown format, and from there you still need to put it into that mini lesson that you're gonna teach the model question and answer, just like you would, basically, quiz a child over time and get them to understand these relationships. And that's what you actually use to fine tune your model. And that's where like the value of getting the AI ready data is so important. And you, as you're looking at use cases that you want to support, ensuring that you have the right data set that's going to kind of have enough knowledge in it that you can do the structuring and provide it to the model. And I think quality and bias is definitely something that we'll also talk about.
And then from a project manager in this, it sounds like one of the steps is this fine tuning that I would work with the subject matter expert on it. Is that how do I know if it's accurate enough, and how do I know when I'm done fine tuning?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say without products like Seekr Flow, you likely would need an ML engineer to help you with the fine tuning process. However, we actually do provide for just to be able to drag and drop the data set that's generated. And from there, you can actually fine tune any of the models that we host. But that being said, there is something to be said for explainability and validation, and that's where not so much the ML expert is important. That's where the business expert is important. And being able to have visibility into the data set that's generated that I can review, in a human in the loop type of situation, or maybe through automation. And then also interacting with that model after it has been fine-tuned. And if you're able to do this quickly, you can easily iterate on the data set that's being provided and also the model in order to provide corrections, whether it's through, again, maybe fine-tuning the model once again on a different QA pair, or potentially doing some reinforced learning from human feedback or DPO that's built into your workflow.
That's great. So we talked a little bit about the challenges. We talked a little bit about this new approach, and then we've got a case study, or some case studies here, looks like.
Yeah. There's various organizations that we've been working with. Again, so one of the biggest hurdles is organizations, they want to transform their data into something that an AI can actually learn from, and do it at scale. And so that's where Seekr Flow comes in. It is an end-to-end platform, end-to-end AI platform, and it's designed to simplify every step of that process that we just talked about, from the ingestion of the raw data, the structuring it into an AI-ready format, fine-tuning models, deploying them. All of that's an integrated approach, reducing the need for multiple tools. It's all done in one place. At the heart of this platform is our AI-ready data engine. It's the core component responsible for doing this transformation of your data. Getting it to the point where an AI can actually learn from it. And the best part is that, as I mentioned before, you can either upload your data directly into our UI, or we provide an API, and it's going to structure that data and generate training data sets for you. There's a number of customers that we've worked with. Some of them are shown here. Stars Play. They are a leading streaming platform, and they wanted to deliver more recommendations and improve how users actually discover content on their platform. And so we help them to structure vast content library into AI-ready formats and fine-tune their models. Then we partner very closely with Intel via their Intel Tiber AI Cloud, and their customers using their Gaudi appliances wanted to be able to deploy LLMs, faster and more efficient. So they use Seekr Flow to do the entire process. Another interesting one is a global supply chain risk company that we're working with, and they needed a way to predict and mitigate potential disruptions in their supply chain. And so we help them to structure and analyze thousands of scored data items, and their AI system can now surface potential risks to their supply chain in real time. And so all of these really show how using Seekr Flow really helps empower businesses unlock the full value of their data.
Great. And before we jump to One Valley, so Seekr Flow, you guys have your own model? Do you use multiple models? Can I bring my model? Is that?
Within Seekr Flow, we host a number of open source models, in that the models that we host are constantly growing. It really comes down to consumer demand. As we're working with a customer, if there's a fit for purpose model that they want to use, then we can support that. And once they train a model in their environment, it is their model. We don't use their data, to train any of our own models. We are in the process of developing our own foundational models that will work best on Seekr.
So if I don't know the difference between all those models, that's something you guys can help me with?
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of decisions that you make in terms of selecting a model. Obviously, size is going to be important. Obviously a larger model will have more knowledge already built into it foundationally. However, that's going to cost more. And so one of the great things about being able to iterate quickly on these models via AI-ready data is that you can use smaller models and basically fine-tune them for your purpose. And especially, we're here talking, a lot about agentic AI. consider that in agentic AI, you're likely using multiple models. Each are doing something different. So maybe you have a lot of smaller models doing smaller processes as part of that agentic workflow. And maybe you have some large models that are doing some of the reasoning. And so, the ability to determine what model works best for what, use case is absolutely something that we can help customers get smart on and consult them with.
That's great. And then last thing before we do this one is, how about deployment? Do I have to have all my data go over into your data center? I've got a lot of it in my own data center now with my trusted cloud provider.
Right. So we are currently working on something called Seekr Everywhere, such that you can use Seekr in any environment, whether that's on-prem or in any of the clouds. Right now we are in Intel, in the Intel Developer Cloud, and also we are deploying to AWS Marketplace within the next month. And shortly after that, all the other cloud providers as well as on-prem will be available. We understand that, your data is your data and you don't want to send it outside of your environment. And so that's a very high priority for us.
So if it's in my developer cloud or in my cloud provider of choice, and I'm using, I guess, perhaps an open source model, then that would have been trained. And so we can, I don't have to be concerned. I can tell my executives our data is not being trained, it's not being used by anyone else. It's inside a trust environment, and we're optimizing an open source, in some cases, an open source model for our data, and that's not even, which is optimized for us, and I'm also not helping my competitor get smart on it.
Exactly. That's one of the core core values of being able to fine tune your own model, and they are your weights and biases, at the end of the day. And we would never take your data and use that, for instance, for the foundation model development that we're doing. And so that's something that we take very seriously, and we follow all, encryption and compliance when it comes to that type of, data protection.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And one last question on the implementation side. Then what kind of skill sets do I need on my team? Do I need AI engineers that need this, or do I need to hire them or hire a SI to do that, or is this no code?
Yeah, it's what I like to think about with the platform and the API as well, is that it can cater to a series of personas. And what I mean is, regardless of where you are in your AI journey or your maturity level of your organization, I think Seekr Flow has a place. And that could be when you have a team of AI engineers, or it could be when you don't. For the situations where when you don't, as I said, first you have a good business requirement defined. And I suspect that, your experts are going to be experts on your business, of course. And so defining that requirement, and then having the data, the raw data to support, whatever the intent of your model is, whether agentic or just a simple, LLM for one shot prompting. And then all you have to do is upload that. And again, it could be done via the UI for those that are maybe non-technical, or it could be done via the API for those that are technical and they're building it into, a larger, coding system. And then, in order to actually fine tune the model, once again, within our platform, the data is readily available for you to select. You select the model that you want to fine tune, and then you begin the process of fine tuning. There are parameters that you can select as part of this, but I believe that they are well defined in terms of, for instance, the number of Gaudi instances that you want to use. 1 or 8. Obviously, 8 is going to be faster. It's going to be more expensive though, and also there are the number of times you want the model to actually train, and so these are things that I think are low entry in terms of understanding, and so I don't believe that you would need someone that actually understands all the nuts and bolts at the I guess at the scaffolding to do.
That's great. Very helpful. And then before we kick this off, if folks have questions, please submit them on LinkedIn. We do a lot of LinkedIn Live. I know some companies, particularly from larger companies, don't want to put their name online. So you can either text me or email me. I've actually got one text question already here. But send us your questions and tell us about One Valley, Ben.
Yeah. So One Valley is a global entrepreneurship platform, and they have over 200,000 users, and they wanted to deliver faster, more personalized product recommendations. And they have a chatbot called Haystack. They had a challenge in terms of the volume and variety of data that we talked about earlier, and it's scattered across many locations: URLs, PDFs, spreadsheets, and also the velocity of the data. In this case, the data set is changing frequently when we think about product information. And so in this case, training a model was not necessarily the optimal solution, because you would have to train it over and over and over. So instead, what we've done here is we built a retrieval augmented generation system, and that's part of our Seekr Flow platform as well. And it allows for AI to pull in up-to-date information in real time while interacting with users. So by doing so, it's going to constantly update and structure the data such that I can then interact with it as a user from all these disparate locations, all these disparate data types. And so that way they can always receive updated, product recommendations. So I would say, looking ahead, the thing we love about One Valley is that we're constantly iterating with them, and that we're constantly part of a conversation. And one of the things I'll say is we recognize that this augmenting AI models with external information, it's a powerful framework, and it's one that we support. But there's also opportunities here to improve how AI actually understands and applies the information that it retrieves. And so actually we've just introduced something called enhanced retrieval as part of the AI ready data engine. And essentially this is a capability that combines RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, with something called retrieval augmented fine tuning. And basically it's enabling AI models to interpret the data that they receive from retrieval with greater accuracy. So an example of this would be, you can think of it like an open book test. You have traditional RAG, lets AI look up information, but without proper training, it might not know where to look or how to apply what it finds. So enhanced retrieval is like teaching the AI to study smarter. So learning which sections are most relevant, how to connect key concepts and apply that knowledge step by step. So it means that AI is not just retrieving information, it can actually reason through it. It can reference domain-specific documents, combine insights from multiple sources, just like StarSpy is doing. And it can also ensure more reliable decision-making. One Valley, I mean to say. So we're really excited about this.
Would you describe that as a type of reasoning model or actual reasoning? And we've got AI judging content, or is it just confusing the viewer to use those terms?
Reason is probably the wrong word to use here, to be quite frank, because what we're talking about here is more of a step-by-step logic, whereas with the reasoning models, what it's doing is it is generating a plan first, a strategy, and then adapting over time. Whereas with this, it's more of I take input from my most recent prompt and I respond based on that, and then even if it's in a stepwise manner. So yeah, this is we're careful not to say reasoning. So if I did say reasoning, I certainly didn't mean to.
No, you didn't. I was just you did a couple steps, and I know the reasoning's been in the news so much. I want to make sure we clarify for the audience here.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a distinction here, and this is more or less once the data is retrieved, how do I process that data better? And, technically speaking, in order to do it, it all comes back to how you prepare the data for training. It all comes back to what, that QA pair plus additional types of stepwise explanations. And, there would also be identifying documents that are good versus documents that are bad that might come back because they're similar as part of a retrieval system. And so getting the data ready is even more challenging than you might have with a traditional chatbot.
So we've talked a little bit about the challenges up front. We talked about kind of the workflow of unstructured data, fixing those challenges. We did a couple case studies here. Where's this headed?
Yeah, I think one of the things to consider first is some of the steps that I think businesses can take. And I just want to highlight that, we're talking a lot about the technology, but I think also successfully integrating any type of AI starts long before the first model is actually deployed. And I think it begins with aligning your AI initiative with your business objective and picking the right data. I think in terms of where we're going, I think that AI, of course, is transforming how businesses operate, enabling systems to, potentially reason, as we were just discussing. I think it all starts with the context-rich data in real-world scenarios. But looking ahead for agentic AI, I think the first thing is that we'll see AI systems reliably making real-time decisions. Agentic systems are exciting. We're all talking about it, but in production today, I believe that there are very few that are doing this reliably for long periods of time. So I think we'll start to see that. So we'll see supply chain systems with automatically adjusting according to disruptions in real time. Maybe they adjust their inventory levels, transportation modifications, that sort of thing. And I think the other thing that a lot of people are talking about is this concept of multi-agent systems that actually collaborate together. It'll be networks of specialized AI agents. And this, again, goes back to, being able to iterate quickly, in a single platform, why it's so important. So ultimately, allowing these systems to interpret complex inputs as the systems themselves get more and more complex is going to have to happen through feedback loops. It's going to have to constantly improve, and our data curation is going to have to constantly improve as well. So I think as long as the AI systems become more autonomous, also maintaining transparency and clear data attribution is also going to be very important as well. And getting your data in the right format, I think is part of that.
Ben, I've got two questions that came in. One came in text and one came in email. When I ask you the questions, I understand both of them, why they aren't posted publicly. One of them is, my management team thinks that hallucination. Let me be more clear. I work in a regulated industry. My management team believes that hallucinations cannot be solved. How can I help them understand that that's not the case?
I think that there are various frameworks that you can use to reduce hallucination. I think that highlighting those different frameworks is really important. But it all starts with hallucination will largely occur whenever your model is not very certain. At the end of the day, their responses are very stochastic based on a distribution, in terms of what the next word should be. It's essentially what a foundation model is doing. So the fine-tuning process, of course, is a big step in terms of reducing hallucinations. I've seen a lot of POCs where they focus a lot on prompt engineering, and they spend long time, working on prompt templates, making sure they're right. They're asking the very specific question to try to avoid hallucination, and it doesn't always work. Instead, I think that those efforts are really good, but there's also the fine-tuning aspect of it, and making sure that you're giving data sets that are really, valuable in the sense of not only the format they're in, but also distilling that data down to what's really meaningful. As an example, I keep referring to this 50-page compliance document. Maybe only 5 pages of that worth of text is actually really, informative. And so, maybe there is some type of recursive summarization that should be done as you're setting up your data, and really distilling down to what matters most, and then using that to actually train the model. Because otherwise, what you might be doing is training, your AI, and it's losing the signal, and then therefore will hallucinate further. And of course, there's always the opportunity for explainability methods, data attribution, context attribution. These are ways in which to basically score or validate that a model is actually responding in the way that it should be. And so these should always be in place, and feedback mechanisms should always be in place. But ultimately, in order for these systems to get better and to reduce hallucination, I think we have to start using them and integrating them, and maybe doing it into areas where it's not necessarily a mission critical. It's not life or limb. Maybe it's going to be something like, think about these tasks that we do day to day. Maybe they only take like a minute or two, but they add up over time. And maybe it's a task that, even if it's a short duration, I want to be able to do it 1,000 times in a day, and all of a sudden that adds up pretty quickly, right? So some of these tasks that are less prone to, I shouldn't say less prone, but less less risk if we do start to use AI. And so I think it's picking your use case as well, and that'll kind of help gain that trust over time.
Ben, we'll do one more question, then we'll do wrap up. And so the last question also came in email. We have a lot of our data in Salesforce and are considering Salesforce. Is that something that Seekr could add value to, or should we stay within the Salesforce ecosystem?
I know Salesforce is doing a lot of agentic work. I would say that, we have our own CRM system, and, one of the things we are looking at, even internally, and this is sort of like a dog food approach, right? You use your own systems that you're building, is, integrating with our CRM, because we find that, think about, you're out generating a lead, or maybe you have lots of leads generated, and you want to either synthesize the information that's in there to capture the better demand signal from the market, or maybe you want to actually have something that helps move leads through the process. So I would say that this is something that is a very viable integration with Seekr Flow, and we're really, really excited to talk with you about it.
That's fantastic. Great. So let's wrap up. Really good discussion here. Tell us what next steps are. What can people do to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, well, definitely go to Seekr.com and check out our product. If you want to request a demo, please, you can reach out to myself or to any of the contacts that are listed there, and happy to continue the conversation with you.
That's fantastic. And if you're looking for general market research about the industry and industry trends, go to GAIinsights.com. We also have our premier annual conference coming up in September 29th here, and 29th and 30th, where we have 800 attendees, and celebrating in production Gen AI cases. So Ben, fabulous discussion. Thank you so much, audience. Thank you so much. And onward we go.
Thanks, Paul.